The package had already been delivered 6 years before I picked it up. That was the first thing the receptionist told me when I walked into Callahan Tower at 11:38 on a rainy Thursday night. My name is Emily Parker. I was 31, white, noticeably plus size, and wearing the same navy delivery jacket I had been trapped inside for almost 13 hours. My feet hurt. My coffee was cold. I wanted exactly 3 things: a hot shower, something involving melted cheese, and 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. Instead, I was standing beneath a chandelier worth more than my car, holding a plain cardboard box that apparently had a history. "That is impossible," I said. The receptionist turned his monitor toward me. "Same tracking number. Same recipient. Same building. Delivered 6 years earlier." I checked my phone. My application showed the order as brand new. Pickup completed 27 minutes ago from a 24-hour shipping counter in Oak Park. Recipient: Vincent Callahan. Penthouse office. Maybe somebody reused the number. The receptionist shook his head. "Our system does not reuse them." The private elevator opened behind him. Vincent Callahan stepped out before I could decide whether $30 was enough money for this much weirdness. I recognized him immediately. Everyone who worked delivery routes downtown knew the name. 40 years old. White. Tall. Black dress, shirt with the sleeves rolled back. Tattoos covered his hands and arms, disappeared beneath his collar, and continued across nearly his entire body. He owned restaurants, warehouses, commercial properties, automotive businesses, and enough real estate to make people lower their voices when they mentioned him. He looked at the package, then at me. "Problem. Depends. Did you order something 6 years ago and forget to pick it up?" His expression barely moved. The receptionist explained. Vincent approached the counter and read the tracking record himself. "Who sent it?" "No sender listed," I said. "That usually means somebody filled out the order incorrectly." He looked at me. "Usually?" "Tonight stopped feeling usual about 2 minutes ago." He took the box, but did not open it immediately. I held out my phone for the delivery signature. "If you could sign, I can return to my glamorous life of traffic and gas station coffee." He almost smiled. Almost. Then he opened the box. Inside was a brass key attached to a faded metal tag and an old warehouse receipt folded twice. Vincent stopped moving. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. "You recognize it," I said. He picked up the receipt carefully. This signature belonged to my father. The paper was dated almost 12 years earlier. I shifted my weight. Maybe he stored something. He died 8 years ago. That removed every easy explanation I had. Vincent turned the receipt over. 5 handwritten words appeared across the back. The first mistake was never corrected. His eyes hardened. "Who gave you this package?" "A clerk at the shipping counter." "Who gave it to him?" "I deliver boxes. I do not investigate their childhoods." This time, the almost smile actually happened, then disappeared. He examined the metal tag. "Number 17. Warehouse 17. I asked. "I do not own a warehouse 17. I glanced at the receipt again. The address line was faded, but the numbers beneath it were clear. I knew those numbers. Not because I understood secret business records. Because I had driven Chicago delivery routes for 7 years. "That is not a warehouse number," I said. Vincent looked at me. I pointed at the sequence. "Those are route markers." His expression changed. "How do you know?" "Because I have driven that route." I pulled up my map and entered the old reference points. A path appeared across the western side of the city, connecting 4 commercial addresses. Vincent stared at the screen. "Those properties belong to my father." Belong. 3 closed years ago. My application suddenly chimed. The completed delivery vanished from my history. A new order replaced it. No payment. No sender. Just a destination 11 miles away. I turned the screen toward Vincent. The customer note contained only 3 words. "Find warehouse 17. The smart thing would have been to go home. Instead, 20 minutes later, I was driving west through Chicago rain with Vincent Callahan sitting in my passenger seat like my old Chevrolet had personally offended him. The brass key rested between us. His tattoos disappeared beneath the sleeves of his black shirt, and every few minutes he looked at my phone mounted above the dashboard as the strange route pulled us farther from downtown. "You always follow anonymous instructions?" he asked. "Only when mysterious billionaires insist on coming along." I did not insist. "You said I was not going without you." He considered that. "Fair. Progress." The route took us past the first address from the old receipt, a narrow commercial building with dark windows. Vincent recognized it immediately. My father operated a packaging company there. When did it close? 9 years ago. We continued 3.4 miles to the second location. Another former Callahan property. Then 5.8 miles to a third. Closed too. Something bothered me. I slowed near an intersection and looked at the map. These stops are wrong. Vincent turned toward me. Wrong how? Nobody planning deliveries would drive them in this order. You would waste almost 40 minutes doubling back. I rearranged the addresses. The route tightened into a clean loop. Vincent watched the screen. And 17? Not a building number. Maybe a route designation. The final point appeared near an old industrial district outside Oak Park. We arrived shortly after midnight. A long brick warehouse stood behind a small parking lot, its exterior lights still glowing. The sign above the entrance carried a company name Vincent said he had never seen. Lakeshore Distribution Services. This property belonged to my father, he said, but not under that name. We checked the address against public information on his phone. The building had changed operating names several times, but the ownership chain eventually returned to an old Callahan administrative company. You still own it, I said. Apparently. That seems like something a person should know. He gave me a look. My companies own hundreds of properties, and I own one Chevrolet. I still know where I parked it. That almost smile returned. We approached the entrance. The brass key opened an old exterior lock beside the newer electronic system. Inside, the warehouse was quiet and brightly lit. Rows of empty shelving stretched beneath fluorescent lights. Nothing looked abandoned. That was the strange part. Near the loading area, I noticed fresh shipping labels stacked beside a printer. Vincent, he joined me. The labels carried names I recognized from the route. The 3 closed businesses. I picked one up. Printed that afternoon. Dead companies do not usually need same-day shipping labels. Vincent took out his phone and called someone named Caleb Foster, Chief Financial Officer. His closest financial executive, judging by the way Vincent spoke to him. Caleb answered immediately. Vincent asked about Lakeshore Distribution. Silence followed. Then Caleb said the warehouse was used only for administrative storage and had no active logistics operations. I looked at the fresh labels in Vincent's hand. He looked at me. Thank you, Caleb, he said calmly, and ended the call without mentioning what we had found. You did not tell him, I said. You were about to tell me not to. I was. He slipped the labels into a clean document envelope. Then what? I pointed toward the printer. A shipping manifest was still open beside it. No merchandise was listed. Only internal cost codes moving between the 3 closed companies. Vincent studied the page. These are financial allocations. Then why are they being processed through a shipping system? He had no answer. My phone chimed again. Another order appeared. Pickup location, Lakeshore Distribution Services. Destination, Callahan Tower. Item description, internal records. Customer note, 3 companies closed. Their expenses never did. By 1:30 in the morning, I was sitting in a conference room 40 floors above Chicago, drinking coffee that probably cost more than my dinner and staring at financial records for companies that officially did not exist. Vincent stood across the table, tattooed hands resting beside 3 shipping manifests. He had called only 2 people, an outside attorney and an independent accountant named Rebecca Hayes. He had not called Caleb again. Rebecca connected remotely and compared the warehouse records with Callahan Holdings reports. 10 minutes became 20. Then she stopped scrolling. These expenses are real, she said. Vincent leaned closer. Explain. Insurance, vehicle leases, maintenance, administrative services. They are being assigned through 3 inactive operating companies. Why? That is what concerns me. The expenses eventually return to active Callahan businesses. I frowned. So nothing disappears? Rebecca looked at me through the screen. Correct. Then somebody is not stealing money. Vincent glanced at me. What are they doing? I thought about delivery routes. A package could reach the correct destination and still travel through the wrong hubs. The result was wasted time, higher costs, and records that made no sense. They are moving the weight, I said. Rebecca understood first. She opened another report. Exactly. She showed us an active automotive company carrying obligations originally assigned to one of the closed businesses. Another healthy warehouse division had inherited administrative expenses from the second. On paper, she said, your strongest companies appear weaker. Vincent became very quiet. How much weaker? Rebecca calculated for several minutes. Across the group, approximately $18 million in liabilities and operating costs have been classified in ways that reduce individual company valuations. I looked at Vincent. Who benefits if your businesses look cheaper? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he opened recent acquisition correspondence. For offers had arrived during the previous year, all below the values he believed the companies were worth. I rejected them, he said. Maybe somebody expected that, I replied. Until the numbers became bad enough that you stopped rejecting. His eyes moved back to the reports. For the first time that night, I saw something stronger than authority in his expression. Doubt. Not about the numbers. About the people around him. Rebecca traced the earliest reclassification. 17 months earlier. Who approved the accounting system change? Vincent asked. She opened the authorization record. 1. Executive credential appeared. Caleb Foster. Vincent stared at the name. I expected anger. Instead, he closed the laptop halfway. I have known Caleb for 12 years. Then do not decide what this means yet, I said. His eyes lifted toward mine. You are telling me how to handle my chief financial officer? I am telling you that knowing a route is wrong does not tell you who changed the signs. Silence. Then Vincent reopened the laptop. Rebecca, preserve everything. Do not contact Caleb. He looked at me. What would you check next? That question surprised me. I picked up one of the fresh warehouse labels. The people who actually move things. Vincent frowned. Drivers. Warehouse workers. Dispatchers. People nobody asks because executives think the computer knows more than they do. My phone vibrated before he could respond. Another delivery appeared. No payment. No customer name. Pickup, Callahan Tower. Destination, a retired driver's address in Berwyn. The note contained 6 words. Ask him about the monthly envelope. The retired driver lived in a modest brick bungalow in Berwyn, and by the time Vincent and I reached his porch, the sky was beginning to turn gray. His name was Frank Miller. He was 68, white, broad-shouldered, and wearing a Chicago Bears sweatshirt when he opened the door. He recognized Vincent immediately. Callahan. Then he looked at me. You must be the driver. I stopped. How would you know that? Frank gave me a tired smile. Because somebody called yesterday and said a delivery woman might eventually ask about old routes. Vincent's expression sharpened. Who called? Recorded message. No name. Frank invited us into a kitchen that smelled like fresh coffee. I showed him the warehouse labels. He recognized them before I finished explaining. Route 17, he said. I drove it every last Friday of the month. For which company? Vincent asked. Technically, whichever company appeared on the manifest. That changed constantly. Frank opened a drawer and removed an old spiral notebook. He had recorded mileage, fuel, and delivery times by hand. Computers lose things. Paper only disappears if somebody throws it away. I liked Frank immediately. He turned to a page dated 9 years earlier. Route 17 connected the same 3 closed businesses we had found. What did you carry? I asked. Usually nothing important. Office supplies. Records. Sometimes an empty document pouch. Vincent frowned. An empty pouch? Frank nodded. Except once a month. Then Dispatch gave me a sealed envelope. Where did it go? Frank tapped an address downtown. Callahan Tower. Always finance. Same receiving code. Vincent checked the code on his phone. His face changed. That code belongs to the chief financial officer's office. Caleb? I asked. Now yes. Before him, someone else. Frank leaned back. That is the strange part. The envelope route existed long before Caleb worked there. I looked at Vincent. So Caleb did not create it. Maybe he inherited it. Frank flipped forward several years. The monthly envelope continued under different executives. Then, 17 months earlier, the entries stopped. That is when the financial classifications changed, I said. Vincent stared at the dates. The old physical route ended exactly when the questionable digital system began. Frank pointed to one final note. Last envelope I carried was different. Dispatch told me to return it if nobody signed personally. Who signed? Vincent asked. Frank turned the notebook toward us. The signature was not Caleb's. Vincent went silent. You know it? I asked. Yes. His voice lowered. That is my father's former financial advisor, Samuel Grant. Frank nodded. He designed half those old routes. Vincent looked confused. Samuel retired 10 years ago. Then somebody should explain why he signed for that envelope 7 years ago, I said. My phone chimed on Frank's kitchen table. Another delivery request appeared. Pickup, none. Destination, none. Only a customer note. The monthly envelope was never the message. It was the key. The message stayed on my screen while Frank poured more coffee. The monthly envelope was never the message. It was the key. I read it twice, then looked at Vincent. What kind of key can fit inside an envelope? He stared at the brass key from the original package resting beside Frank's notebook. Not that kind. Frank rubbed his chin. Samuel used to talk about control numbers. Vincent turned toward him. What control numbers? Tiny reference codes printed on internal documents. They told accounting which ledger, property group, or administrative account to use. I looked at the old notebook. So the envelope carried a number from one department to another. Probably. Frank disappeared into the hallway and returned with a small box of retirement papers. He found a photocopied delivery receipt from his final route. Near the bottom was a 6-digit code. Vincent photographed it and sent it to Rebecca. 10 minutes later, her answer arrived. The code belonged to a dormant administrative reserve account created under Samuel Grant's financial structure. Can it still be accessed? I asked. Vincent called Rebecca. She checked. The account is inactive for banking purposes, but its classification authority still exists inside the accounting software. That sentence made my coffee suddenly less interesting. So somebody could use an old code to move expenses without moving actual money. Exactly, Rebecca said. Vincent stood. Then we find everyone who accessed it. Not yet, I said. He looked at me. Emily, if somebody is watching the system, searching the access history might tell them we found the code. What do you suggest? The fact that he asked instead of ordered did not escape me. I thought about delivery tracking. If I wanted to know whether someone was reading my route, I would give them a harmless destination and see whether they followed it. Give them something new. Rebecca understood immediately. A controlled classification. With outside counsel supervising everything, she created a fictional $6 million equipment obligation inside a restricted draft report. It never touched a bank account, invoice, tax record, vendor, or official statement. It existed only as a test number visible to 5 authorized executives. Caleb Foster was one of them. We returned to Callahan Tower shortly after 8 that morning. I had been awake so long that the city outside the conference room windows looked unreal. Vincent stood behind Rebecca's laptop while access notifications appeared. 8:41. General Counsel opened the draft. 8:47. Internal audit. 9:12. Caleb Foster. Vincent said nothing. Now we wait, I said. I dislike waiting. I noticed. At 10:16, Rebecca received an email from an acquisition advisor who had approached Callahan Automotive twice during the previous year. He wanted to reopen discussions because of what he called newly identified equipment obligations. Amount, approximately $6 million. The room went silent. Vincent's tattooed hand tightened around the back of a chair. Caleb opened the report 64 minutes before that email. That proves he saw it, I said. Not that he sent it. Vincent looked at me. You really refuse to make anything easy. Easy conclusions are how people end up on bad routes. Rebecca checked the document history. The draft had not been downloaded or forwarded. Then she noticed something else. Caleb's account had opened it through an automated executive dashboard, not manually. So he might not even have read it, she said. Vincent slowly released the chair. That was when the test became more interesting. Someone outside Callahan had learned the exact fictional number without an obvious transfer from Caleb. Rebecca traced the dashboard's data connections. One legacy reporting service still had permission to read executive classifications. The service had been installed years earlier by Samuel Grant's consulting firm. There, I said. The old route never disappeared. It stopped using envelopes. Vincent stared at the connection log. It became digital. Rebecca opened the destination record. The legacy service was sending summarized financial classifications to an external valuation platform every night. The same platform used by 3 companies that had tried to buy Callahan assets. Vincent looked toward me. So Caleb may not be the leak. He may still know about it. But now we know something more important. I pointed at the screen. The system itself is carrying the package. Rebecca began tracing who had renewed the legacy connection 17 months earlier. One authorization appeared. Vincent leaned closer. I watched his expression change before I saw the name. Who is it? I asked. He turned the laptop toward me. The renewal had been approved using the executive credentials of someone Vincent trusted more than Caleb. Someone who had sat beside him through almost every major business decision for 12 years. His chief operating officer, Nathan Cole. Nathan Cole's name sat on the screen like a door nobody wanted to open. Vincent did not speak for several seconds. I had seen him irritated, suspicious, and impatient. This was different. Nathan was not just another executive. He had helped Vincent rebuild operations after his father died. He had attended family funerals, company anniversaries, and every major expansion meeting for more than a decade. Call him, Vincent said. I shook my head. No. His eyes moved to me. Emily, this is my company. And 900 people work inside it. You want an answer because you are angry. I want the truth because they still need jobs tomorrow morning. Rebecca stopped typing. Nobody else moved. Vincent's tattooed hands rested against the conference table. You expect me to sit here while Nathan has access to everything? I expect you to stop confusing action with control. The silence that followed felt longer than it was. Then Vincent pulled out a chair and sat down. What would you do? That question changed something between us. I pointed toward the authorization record. First, prove Nathan actually approved it. Credentials are not people. Rebecca checked the digital signature. The renewal had been submitted at 2:17 on a Sunday morning 17 months earlier. Nathan's calendar showed he had been in Denver that weekend for an operations conference. Could he have logged in remotely? Vincent asked. Yes, Rebecca said. But there is another problem. The authorization originated from a Callahan office terminal in Chicago. Vincent leaned forward. Which terminal? Rebecca traced the device number. It belonged to an executive conference room on the 38th floor. Access logs showed 3 employees entered that floor that Sunday. Caleb Foster, Nathan's executive assistant, and Nathan himself, according to his badge. But Nathan was in Denver, I said. Rebecca nodded. His badge was used here while he was documented there. Vincent looked toward the city. Someone used his credentials and badge. Or Nathan gave them permission, I said. We still do not know. Rebecca pulled archived security administration records. Nathan had reported his badge missing 2 days after the conference. A replacement was issued. So whoever had the old badge had a narrow window, I said. Caleb's badge record showed he entered at 9 that morning and left before noon. Nathan's assistant arrived later. Neither record matched 2:17. Then Rebecca found something strange. The building system had automatically recorded Nathan's old badge at 2:17, but no elevator movement followed. Meaning? Vincent asked. The authorization may have been scheduled earlier and released automatically. That brought us back to Samuel Grant's old system. Again, the past was not haunting Vincent. It was running software. Rebecca opened the original configuration files. The renewal was part of a contingency process designed to reactivate when certain financial thresholds appeared. Nathan's credentials had approved the system years earlier as chief operating officer, but the 17-month renewal had been automatic. Vincent stared at the screen. So Nathan may have done nothing. Exactly, I said. And if you had confronted him 10 minutes ago, you might have accused your closest friend of something a computer did with his old permission. He looked at me for a long moment. You enjoy being right. I enjoy not being wrong loudly. Rebecca almost laughed. Then another archived file opened. Samuel Grant had labeled the contingency process Employee Stability Protocol. Its purpose was not to weaken Callahan companies. It was supposed to identify struggling divisions early and move certain administrative burdens temporarily so employees could remain on payroll during restructuring. Someone had reversed the classifications. A protection system, I said. Turned backward. Rebecca nodded. And the reversal started 17 months ago. Vincent's phone vibrated. Caleb had sent him a routine morning message asking whether their 11 o'clock meeting was still happening. Vincent looked at me. What now? I thought about the warehouse labels, the retired driver, the envelopes, and the system quietly carrying information where nobody noticed. Now we stop looking for the person beside the throne, I said. We find out who taught the system to run backward. The system had not betrayed Vincent. Someone had simply taught an old promise to mean the opposite of what it once meant. Rebecca found the first clue buried inside 17-month-old configuration notes. One line had been changed in the Employee Stability Protocol. Not deleted. Not replaced. Reversed. Healthy divisions were now absorbing expenses from weaker or inactive companies instead of receiving temporary relief from them. Who changed the rule? Vincent asked. Rebecca traced the modification through archived vendor records. The update came from Grant Financial Systems, Samuel Grant's former consulting firm. Samuel retired 10 years ago, Vincent said. The company still exists, Rebecca replied. Different ownership. She opened the corporate history. Grant Financial Systems had been purchased 4 years earlier by Meridian Valuation Partners. I recognized the name immediately. That is the platform receiving your financial classifications. Vincent looked at me. And the same platform used by the companies trying to buy my assets, I added. Rebecca nodded. Suddenly the route made sense. The system weakened selected Callahan companies on paper. Meridian received summarized classifications. Potential buyers saw businesses that appeared burdened with rising costs. Then offers arrived below their real operational value. They did not need to steal from me, Vincent said quietly. They only needed me to believe my companies were worth less. Rebecca searched the original Samuel Grant files. What she found changed the room again. The Employee Stability Protocol had been created during a recession when Vincent's father was struggling to keep several hundred employees working. Instead of immediately closing weak divisions, temporary administrative costs could be redistributed while management repaired operations. Every transfer required review. Every company eventually had to carry its own weight again. Your father built this to protect payroll, Rebecca said. Vincent stared at the old document. I watched his expression soften for the first time since midnight. He never told me. Maybe he thought he had more time, I said. Vincent looked toward the windows. Morning sunlight had finally reached the buildings across the river. For all his money, authority, and carefully controlled silence, he suddenly looked like a son discovering a sentence his father had forgotten to finish. Rebecca kept searching. The modified version removed the review requirement. Once expenses moved, they stayed moved. That explained why healthy divisions had grown weaker month after month. Can we reverse it? I asked. Yes, Rebecca said. But not instantly. We need independent verification before changing historical classifications. Vincent nodded. Do it correctly. No command to hide the problem. No demand for shortcuts. Just correctly. Then Rebecca found another file attached to Samuel's original protocol. It was labeled Independent Courier Contingency. My stomach tightened. Open that. The document described what should happen if the financial system detected repeated classification anomalies combined with unauthorized external reporting. An offline packet would be generated through a third-party delivery network. The recipient was the current Callahan principal. The courier had to be independent of Callahan Holdings, its vendors, its advisors, and its executive staff. Vincent slowly turned toward me. That package was not random, I said. Rebecca read further. The courier selection was automated according to proximity, active status, route history, and absence of financial connections to Callahan Holdings. I laughed once because I was too tired to do anything else. So I got dragged into this because I was nearby and broke. Vincent almost smiled. Independent. That is a wealthy man's word for broke. But something about it stayed with me. I had spent years feeling invisible inside office towers where people barely looked up when I handed them packages. Yet the system had chosen someone precisely because nobody powerful owned her loyalty. Rebecca scrolled to the final instruction. If the courier successfully identified Route 17, a second archive would become available. Where? Vincent asked. Rebecca entered the brass key number. An address appeared on the screen. A private storage facility 6 miles away. Unit 17. Vincent picked up the key. Then he looked at me instead of the door. You have been awake all night. You can walk away. I stood and zipped my delivery jacket. I could have done that 7 hours ago. His expression softened. Why did you not? I looked at the old protocol on the screen. Because somebody built a system to protect ordinary workers, and somebody else turned it into a way to make them disposable. I picked up my keys. I want to know what Samuel left in that unit. Vincent followed me toward the elevator. For once, he did not walk ahead. He walked beside me. Unit 17 was smaller than I expected. After everything that had happened, part of me imagined some enormous room filled with answers. Instead, Vincent and I stood inside a storage space barely 10 feet wide, facing 4 archive boxes, 1 metal file case, and an old folding chair. Morning light slipped through the hallway behind us. Vincent inserted the brass key into the file case. It turned easily. Inside were paper records organized by year, copies of Samuel Grant's original system agreements, and one sealed envelope addressed to whoever inherited control of Callahan Holdings. Vincent opened it slowly. Samuel's letter was not dramatic. It was practical. He explained that the employee stability protocol had been designed as a temporary shield during difficult business cycles, never as a permanent accounting advantage. Every transfer was supposed to protect workers while a struggling division recovered. Every executive was supposed to review the system personally. Then one sentence made Vincent stop reading. Power becomes dangerous when the people carrying its consequences are never invited into the room. I looked at him. Your father knew about this? Vincent continued reading. Samuel wrote that Vincent's father had insisted on the independent courier safeguard because executives eventually became too familiar with their own systems. If unusual patterns appeared, the warning had to travel through someone outside the organization, someone without a title to protect, someone who understood how things moved in the real world. Vincent lowered the letter. That is why it chose you. Because I happened to be available. No. He glanced at the records. Because you were independent. I wanted to make a joke, but I could not. For years, people had treated my delivery work like the space between more important jobs. I knew loading docks, back entrances, warehouse schedules, traffic patterns, receiving desks, and which businesses looked busy while barely moving anything at all. Those details had never sounded impressive at a dinner table. Here, they had exposed what executive reports missed. We opened the remaining boxes. Samuel had preserved baseline valuations, employee counts, original classification rules, and instructions for restoring the system if it was ever manipulated. Rebecca joined us by phone and confirmed the records could help independent auditors reconstruct the legitimate accounting structure. More importantly, the documents showed that Meridian had acquired Grant Financial Systems with contractual limits preventing it from using Callahan data for external valuation purposes. So they violated their own agreement, I said. That is what counsel will determine, Vincent replied. I noticed the difference immediately. The man I had met hours earlier might have announced the conclusion before anyone finished checking it. Now he was waiting for facts. Rebecca outlined the next steps. Isolate the legacy connection, preserve every record, commission an independent review, notify appropriate business partners, and correct the classifications without disrupting payroll. Vincent agreed to all of it. Then he added something she had not suggested. Create a review group with drivers, warehouse supervisors, dispatchers, and hourly employees. Rebecca paused. For financial controls? For operational reality. If a report says something that makes no sense on the ground, I want someone able to say it. I leaned against the file case. Careful. You might accidentally start listening to people. Vincent looked at me. I had a difficult teacher. We carried the records toward the hallway. At the elevator, he stopped. Emily, when this is finished, I want you working for Callahan Holdings. I stared at him. Doing what? Logistics oversight. Name your salary. There it was. The old Vincent. Solve a problem by buying the solution. I handed him the archive box I was carrying. No. His eyebrows lifted. No. You learned the wrong lesson if you think respecting my value means owning my time. Silence settled between us. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. What do you want? I thought about my Chevrolet, 13-hour shifts, cold coffee, and every warehouse where I had watched obvious problems become expensive because nobody asked the drivers. I want my own logistics company. Vincent studied me. Then build one. I planned to. My phone chimed. For the first time all night, it was an ordinary paid delivery request. I smiled at the screen. Vincent noticed. Where to? 3 miles south. He held the elevator door open. Then I suppose you have work. I stepped inside. I always did. You just finally noticed. 6 months later, I stood outside a small brick office on the west side of Chicago and stared at my name painted across the glass door. Parker Route Solutions. Nothing underneath it belonged to Vincent Callahan. That mattered to me more than I expected. The office was only 900 square feet. 3 desks. 1 conference table. A coffee maker that complained louder than my old Chevrolet. But it was mine. After the independent review, Callahan Holdings corrected the distorted classifications, disconnected the legacy reporting system, and rebuilt its financial controls. Meridian's access to Callahan data ended while attorneys and auditors handled everything that followed. Caleb stayed. Nathan stayed. Neither man had created the problem everyone had nearly blamed them for. Vincent did something more surprising than firing people. He admitted that his company had relied too heavily on systems executives. Barely understood. Then he changed that. Drivers joined quarterly operations meetings. Warehouse supervisors reviewed logistics assumptions before major decisions. Dispatchers could flag numbers that looked reasonable on a spreadsheet, but impossible on an actual route. Nobody called it Emily's rule. I was grateful for that. I had enough problems without becoming corporate vocabulary. Vincent offered me the executive position twice more. I refused twice more. On the third conversation, I asked him for something different. A loan, he said. A business loan, I corrected. With interest. Written terms. No favors. He studied me across the same conference table where our strange night had unfolded. You could have the money without interest. Then I would spend years wondering whether this company was mine or something you gave me. He nodded slowly. Fair market terms. Exactly. He arranged an introduction to an independent community lender and stepped away from the decision. I secured enough financing for 2 used vans, insurance, software, and the tiny office I was standing inside now. My first clients were local restaurants and repair shops. My fifth was a regional medical supply company. My ninth surprised me. Callahan Automotive requested a logistics audit through the same public process as everyone else. No special phone call. No private arrangement. Just a contract with my company name at the top. That afternoon, a black sedan stopped outside my office. Vincent stepped out wearing a dark coat over a black shirt, tattoos visible above his collar and across his hands. He looked through the window at my 3 employees arguing cheerfully over delivery zones. You need a bigger office, he said when he came inside. Good afternoon to you too. Your parking situation is terrible. That is why you have a driver. He almost smiled. Some things had not changed. Others had. He no longer entered a room expecting silence to organize itself around him. He listened before answering. He asked questions that did not already contain the answer he wanted. On my desk sat the old brass key. Vincent noticed it. You kept it. Samuel's archive did more for my career than any resume ever did. You did that yourself. I looked at him. Months earlier, I might have thought he was being polite. Now I knew he meant it. How are the employee reviews working? I asked. Annoying. Good. Last month, a warehouse supervisor stopped us from signing a distribution contract because the proposed turnaround times were impossible. Very good. He said he learned to speak up because management finally started listening. Vincent paused. That part was your fault. I smiled. I will accept responsibility. Outside, one of my vans pulled into the lot. My name was printed on its side. Not Callahan. Not Grant. Mine. Vincent walked toward the door, then stopped. Dinner sometime? It was not an order. Not an expectation. Just a question. I looked at him for a moment. Ask me again when I am not working. He nodded. I can do that. After he left, I stood beside the window and watched Chicago traffic crawl beneath a pale evening sky. 6 months earlier, I thought power meant having enough money to choose every road. I was wrong. Vincent had spent his life believing something similar. Maybe that was why we understood each other eventually. He had influence, buildings, companies, and rooms full of people waiting for him to speak. I had a delivery jacket, an old Chevrolet, and enough stubbornness to tell him when the route made no sense. He taught me that my experience had value beyond surviving another shift. I taught him that authority without listening was just another bad map. He spent his life believing power meant choosing the road. I learned something better. Real power was building your own road, then respecting everyone who had to travel beside you.